Alrighty, here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Play-by-Play podcast. My name is Brendan, and this is Sterling. And welcome. We have a lot of really good stuff to talk about today. I think the first one that I want to start off on is actually just let me pull that up, is the college football playoffs, because I think it's a pretty interesting topic right now. We have number 1 Alabama going up against number 4 Cincinnati, number 2 Michigan going up against number 3 Georgia. Honestly, I think these are all really phenomenal matchups. I do have one team that I am cheering for more than the others. I do want to see Cincinnati kind of take it, even though I do think they are the underdogs in this scenario. Honestly, I think just from looking at it right now, it looks like Alabama's going to be unstoppable. They had that one hiccup earlier in the year where they ended up losing, but now, we're back to Alabama football where, let's be honest, they're basically unstoppable right now, especially when, Bryce Young, their quarterback, is playing completely lights out and on fire.
Yeah, that seems like typical Alabama football. Honestly, I haven't got to watch a lot of college football this year, unfortunately. I do agree, Cincinnati, definitely the underdog. You never see a Bearcat team in the national championship discussion, really. But yeah, the way it's laid out this year, it's really looking like it's going to be a 1-2 for the national championship, Alabama and Michigan.
Yep. Funny enough, with the statistics, actually, the number 3 seed has never won the national championship. We've seen a number 1, a number 2, and a number 4, but never number 3, which is surprising. And we might see Georgia attempt to do this year, but they've just looked so dominant until obviously they went up against Alabama in that SEC championship game, and we just saw what happened there. And Michigan just looked so good, and it's hard to see them. It's really open for those 1, 2, 3, but I do kind of think that Cincinnati is kind of the underdog. I would love to see them pull an upset over Bama, though.
I feel like that's what the college playoffs always have been since they started it a few years back. And it doesn't surprise me that the number three's never won it because often in college football, 1, 2, and 3 are very literally ranked 1, 2, and 3 in the country. And that number 4 seed always seems to be like that outside underdog that the voters are throwing in there just to mix things up, see if they can upset that number 1 seed. But really, the number 3 seed always is a step below 1 and 2 every year.
I agree. There's not many years where you look at 1 and 2 and go, okay, like these teams aren't terribly far away from each other. And then when you go to
No.
number 3, you're like, okay, like there's a hole here, or they had like a hiccup here, and then number 4, it's kind of one of those like, oh yeah, this team, it either like they snuck in, or it's like, okay, yeah, like this was the right choice, like give it to them.
Yeah, and I mean, even before the football playoff setup started, and it was always just 1 versus 2, or occasionally 1 versus 3 if the voters decided that randomly.
Yep.
I, I I always found that the reason they came to this college football playoff wasn't to get that number 3 seed team a chance at a national championship. It was because there was always an undefeated underdog team sitting fourth, fifth, sixth. Somewhere in that range that they were like, man, these guys are undefeated this year. They've been undefeated for 2 years, like Boise State a few years back before the college football playoff started up.
Yep.
And it really felt like a reason to get those guys into the conversation. Which the Cincinnati Bearcats, that's exactly what that is. Though I'm a little bit surprised that Notre Dame didn't make the cut this year. They were just on the outside looking in.
I think one of the big reasons why Notre Dame particularly didn't get in is right around the time when a lot of people were in that discussion of like, oh, who's going to get into this race. Obviously, we saw Brian Kelly move over to LSU, and I think a lot of people were like at that moment like, okay, well, Notre Dame doesn't really have a coach, so like there is the possibility, and they are a good team, but I think the 4 teams that made it were honestly the right choice. I think Ohio State, you saw that game against Michigan, they didn't look great. And, you
No.
kind of take a look at it and you're like, wow, okay, we'll see what happens there. But I think this year, particularly, I don't really think you can look at any of these four teams and say, wow, they are not, they like, so a team got robbed and they shouldn't have been there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, and strength of schedule plays a role too. Cincinnati had a bit of a tougher schedule than Notre Dame, which is pretty common for Notre Dame, being one of those
Independent
teams
teams.
that isn't really part of a division. It's hard for them to get those really strong schedules like the Big Ten and the SEC and even the ACC and the Big 12, Pac 12. Like it's hard to get really good strength of schedules like those other divisions when you're an individual.
No, I agree with you. And, Notre Dame, since they are an independent conference,
Hmm.
they literally just go around playing whoever they can. And sometimes they get really, really tough years and they perform really well. And some years they kind of have more of a medium year. Notre Dame is always going to have a tough schedule just simply because they are one of those prestigious programs that, throughout the history of college football, they want to see them, playing tough teams. But yeah.
Yeah, well, and everybody wants the bragging rights of, oh, we beat Notre Dame this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's always, oh, excuse me, it's always one team that always gets that right every single year, and it's like, oh wow, like
Yep.
this team kind of came out of nowhere and shocked Notre Dame. That's a little bit surprising right there. But like, I want to know what would be your thoughts on a 8-team college playoff.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't go all the way to eight. I mean, if they really want to expand it, I'd start at six and give those one and two that bye, because I think it would be good for player development for sure. It would really help the players get some playoff experience and an idea of what the playoffs feel like if and when they get drafted into the NFL. Because prior to even this playoff, it was literally just you finish your season, you win your conference championship, you play one game after New Year's, and your season's done.
Yep, you just move on.
Scheduling would be much more difficult because I mean you're asking these college kids who are not getting paid essentially to be away from their families through the holidays.
Well, they are getting paid
When
now.
are they getting paid now?
Yep.
Oh, when
Bryce,
did that start?
it started this year. So funny enough, Alabama's
Ah,
quarterback Bryce Young, as soon as this got announced, literally a week after it got announced, he signed $1 million contract with someone. I don't exactly remember who he signed it with, but I know like he's already making $1 million before even starting as a college quarterback.
that's interesting. Yeah, I never thought they would go that route. I really, I mean, they pushed against it for years and years and years. I didn't think they would ever allow that.
Yeah,
That's going to make it more competitive going forward, though, because that's going to really give players a reason to play through their junior and senior years
yep.
rather than declaring for the draft early.
Oh, for sure.
Because you're still going to be making some money. You can finish your education. It is a good decision. I don't know if $1 million being paid to a 19-year-old is really a good idea. I mean, I'm in my 30s and I would probably make some bad decisions with $1 million if it was dropped in my lap.
Yep.
So,
No, I agree with you right
hopefully,
there.
yeah, I'm hoping this comes along with some financial education for these kids because it is a problem in the NFL already where, we see some guys, they retire. We know they made millions, tens of millions of dollars throughout their career. And within 5 years, we're hearing about how they're filing bankruptcy,
Yeah,
and
no, I
they
agree with
can't
you.
afford all their luxurious cars and their homes. And then they're working at Home Depot,
Yep. Just this Hall of Fame player, who was just a god amongst men, is now working at Home Depot selling wood.
right?
Yeah. But no, like I going back to that kind of, Bryce Young making $1 million, when I heard that, I was like, you need to let him actually prove something before signing to him. Yes, he is the star quarterback of arguably the greatest college football team to have ever existed, especially in more modern day terms. you know
Yes. Yeah.
and like he hasn't necessarily done anything and you're giving him $1 million. Now granted, I've always said college players need to be paid, without a doubt they need to be paid, because the NCAA makes billions of dollars off of these kids. It's disgusting, and
It
you just
is.
look at it and you're like, a kid wants to make a YouTube video. I don't know if you know the guy Destroying. He's a YouTube kicker. He was
No, I don't.
I'm pretty sure, I forget which college he was at, but he was filming a lot of videos of him like practicing kicking, like, oh, I'm gonna do a trick shot kick video. And he started to actually make some money off of it. And the NCAA was like, you either need to shut your YouTube channel down,
No.
or you have to we have to drop you. And he ultimately chose to go with the YouTube career, because kicking in the NFL is, how many guys do you see every single year where you bring in like 4 or 5 new teams, have a new kicker, and it's just constant
Yep.
constant rotation. So I think he made the right choice. But
Well,
the
and
NC
sometimes all it takes is missing one kick in a key moment, and your career's over.
Exactly. There's
Yeah.
not many guys that you can say can miss a key kick in a game and still have much of a career after that. I think you can look at,
Mhm.
guys like Adam Vinatieri, Justin Tucker. Like, these are some of those guys that if they miss a big kick, you know, everyone's just going to look at that and go like, okay, that is a freak accident that is never going to happen again. But for
Yeah.
90% of the guys kickers in the league, they miss that bad kick, and you see cities and franchises just completely turn on them. Obviously, me being a Bears fan, every time I'm watching a game, we go up for a kick, they always have to mention the double doink, and I
Yep.
cry a little bit every single time, and I'm like, you know what? That was, what, 4 years ago at this point.
Yep.
We
And I mean, I'm feeling that way lately too. Ever since that concussion against Cleveland back at the beginning of the season, Chris Boswell has not been the same. He's missed several extra points. He missed a field goal yesterday as well, or on Thursday, sorry.
Yep.
He's all it takes is one injury, one bad week, bad year, and your career can just end as a
Yeah.
kicker.
Yeah, well, look at the Bears kicker, for instance. Carlos Santos. He held the current record for consecutive field goals made throughout the regular season, and then obviously he's in Pittsburgh, and they ask him to make a 40, like a 64-yard kick. Obviously he doesn't make it. It was like, if he had a little bit more leg under it, he would have made it, because it was straight down the middle. It just didn't have the distance. But from then on, he's missed, I think, like 3 field goals after that point, when he was
Yeah,
just
totally
playing.
shook his confidence.
I still have full confidence in him when I'm watching him. I'm like, you know what, like, when you go 40, when you have like 40 consecutive kicks in a row of just success, I do look at it and go, yeah, it sooner or later you're bound to have a couple of misses. The best dude, Justin Tucker, doesn't make every single kick. Adam Vinatieri missed a couple of kicks. You always look at the greatest and go, they missed kicks. But yeah, it's one of those things that after that, I saw like 3 more. I was like, ooh, fuck, maybe we really shouldn't have gone for that 64-yarder. Did you just, you know, yeah, it's
You,
insane.
yeah, you did. You destroyed that guy's confidence.
Yeah, but yeah, kind of jumping back to that college football. But yeah, I'm happy these kids are making money, because again, there was billions and billions of dollars being made off of what they're doing. And let's be honest, football is not a safe sport. It's a dangerous sport. There's so many times where we'll see a kid who has a lot of promise, tear his knee, not be able to do anything, and he can't go anywhere from that point on. And yeah, it's rough, but I do think there needs to not necessarily be like $1 million right out of the gate, because I feel
Yeah,
like
I
that's insane.
it feels like a signing bonus. Here you go, and it should be more of a rewards type of
Exactly.
setup. Like milestones on the field and off the field. I think needs to be included. You got to keep your grades up, and there should be monetary support there as well for these football players.
For
But
sure.
then you run into the issue of you're going to have a lot of kids at these universities that are going, well, I just because I'm not athletic, I don't get to take advantage of this, and that's unfair, which
Yep.
I would agree with.
Yep.
Like just because you're not physically gifted and able to play a sport, now You've got to pay for your education instead of the university paying you to come and be educated there.
I agree. But kind of like going back to that is that I've always looked at it from like the point of like my situation that I'm in. For instance, I am a broadcast news student and I am capable of going out and doing something like this where, for instance, if we and when we get monetized and we can start profiting off of this, they're not like the university that I'm at, they are not going to look at me and go, we are going to have to kick you out of school because of this. You know,
No.
for instance, like I can do that because this is what I'm, in school to do. And honestly, I've been told to start doing this by professors to try to boost my career. And but yeah, for all these athletes beforehand who couldn't do that, they were looking at it like, well, how come this computer programmer guy can go on YouTube and write a bunch of silly code and make thousands and thousands of dollars off of it, but I can't, post a video of me throwing and all that kind of stuff and profit
Right.
off of it. And so
Yeah.
I do think there is kind of like that balance. Like obviously that computer programming guy who isn't gonna make that $1 million off of a signing endorsement, he's looking at Bryce Young going like, this dude has done what for Alabama before the
Well,
season started.
and that is a difference too between you're making your own money versus the university is paying you money.
Yeah.
Like if these like first and foremost, these guys should have been allowed to go out and get endorsement deals. If Nike
100%.
or Reebok or somebody wants to pay these guys to be in a commercial, that should be 100% allowed.
Yeah.
Because that is open to everybody. And anybody, there's tons of advertisers out there that would jump on people. So that it's just a very fine line
Yeah.
when the university starts paying out money
It's
to
not
these
actually the
athletes.
universities, it's sponsorship deals.
It is the sponsorship deals? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I
Well,
would I
that's
would
fine
be a
then.
lot
If it's
more iffy.
sponsored,
Yeah.
then it's out of the university's hands, so then the fellow students cannot complain.
Exactly, because if it was the
Yeah.
universities paying the players, particularly, I'd be like, this is like you're playing a sketchy and rough kind of game right there, and I'm like, but yeah,
Well,
it's
exactly.
sponsorships.
It's a fine line to walk because it's happening with NCAA football. I assume it's going to follow suit or has already happened with NCAA basketball, and then you're going to get into the argument of you know fair equal payments between men and women. Are those women's NCAA players going to make the same amount of money, and things like that are going to start coming up.
For sure,
So
and
that's going to be a minefield for the universities to be wading through.
yeah, and one of the other things that I don't like, if the colleges were to actually start paying players, you would see these massive schools, for instance, like the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Michigans, the Cincinnatis,
Yep.
all these massive schools to be like, you know what, we're going to take you away from your California. We know you want to go to UCLA, but we're going to give you $1 million to come play in Alabama. And
Mm.
the kid be like, well, I don't really want to move home, but UCLA is only going to pay me $50,000 to come play here, so of course I'm going to take the million and go play for Alabama.
Yep, yeah, and that should be something where there should be open transparency if it ever comes to that point,
Yep.
where the monetary uh, supplement should not be discussed at all during the recruiting process.
Yep.
That is something that comes after the recruit's been made and the registration has been signed with that school.
Yep.
So you cannot transfer to another until the following school year.
Exactly.
Then, at that point, you can discuss the monetary aspects to it. Of course, you're still going to get guys who, all that's going to be public record. And so somebody will be like, well, I know this quarterback going to Alabama made $600,000 more than the quarterback who signed over here with, in my home state.
Yep.
So I'm going to go there instead.
Yeah.
You will get that. But if there's transparency, then I think it could be a good thing for sure.
For sure. Now, we did kind of go on a tangent there. We were talking about the college playoffs, and you like the idea of a 6-team format. Personally, I like
Yes.
the idea of an 8-team format because I really look at the 8 teams right there, and I go, there is no room to hide. There is no issues with, oh, this team should have been in there, this team should have been in, this team got robbed. I think 6, you still kind of have that little bit of gray area of going like, well, is this team necessarily better than this team? Because there has been years where we've seen, on Ohio State be ranked 7th, and for instance, you can see, I think it was like FIU, who was like years of just undefeated teams, and you're like, well, yeah, they're
Yep.
undefeated, but like they haven't played
But their
anyone.
strength of schedule is so weak.
Exactly,
Exactly.
it's
It's easy to
essentially
be
playing
undefeated
two
when you're
two.
playing it in a weak conference.
Yeah, and you're like, well, Ohio State did lose that one game, but that was against Alabama, so like, and it was a close game. But yeah, so that's the reason that I would like 8. But like going over to the 6 discussion, I do like the idea of like teams 1 and 2 getting that bye week, and so it's allowing it a little bit more of kind of like realistic NFL playoffs.
Well, and I don't necessarily mean 6 as the stopping point either. I feel like college football, it needs to do a slow growth because even initially when we jumped to the football playoff from just 1 and 2 playing, usually it was very defined who the best teams were. You were sometimes getting a team left out. Once we went to this college football, I noticed a lot more teams really focusing in on their recruiting a little bit better, and all the teams all across the United States, I felt got a little bit better. They all raised their level up a little bit because
Yep.
they're like, oh, we don't have to be top 2, we can be top 4. And that's why I think going to the 6 to start, that allows that slow burn. We get a couple of the other good teams in there, and then all those teams that keep missing out, they're like, okay, well, you know what? We're not quite there yet, apparently. We need to do better.
Yep.
And then we're going to see an even greater rise in talent. And then at that point, you expand into that 8 team when that happens.
Yeah.
Because even right now, like year to year, this year, yeah, it's very much defined. There's 8 great teams that should have been in it and could have been in it. But there are years where sometimes it is only 5 or 6 that are really good, and you've got a whole bunch of 3, 4, and 5 loss teams filling out the top 10, and then the rest of the top 25, you've got those weak conference undefeated teams.
Yeah.
But then, maybe when you go to that 8 from the 6, you start going, okay, it's not going to be purely teams 7 and 8 that are in there. We're going to look in the top that we're going to pull that from the top 25, and it's those undefeated teams from those lesser conferences that really have a hard time getting into that top tier voting. Because I feel like a lot of times those teams, because they're in a weak conference, they have a weak strength of schedule. They don't even look at them. They don't even consider them. They're like, oh, we don't care that they've won 30 games in a row. That doesn't matter to us. They're never going to be able to beat an Alabama or a Michigan, so we don't even want them there because there's no money in that for us.
Oh, for
But
sure.
there's money in that for those small schools. The national coverage and the advertising that those universities can then bring in, and then the recognition that they get from it,
It's
you'll
huge.
start seeing some of these 4 and 5 star recruits going, yeah, I could go to Alabama. I could be a second or a third string and try to work my way up there, and maybe my junior year I'll be a starter. Or they can go, maybe I should go to FIU or one of these other schools. I can be a starter right away as a freshman. I can really showcase my skills, and maybe I can, lead that team to a national championship, and they've never won one before.
Yeah. Well,
I think we'll see a lot more.
for sure. Like, and I remember when FIU, I want to say it's FIU. We could both be, blowing smoke up our ass on that one. But when
Hey,
that
they're
team,
getting lots of airtime.
exactly. But when that team did go on that like 30-game win streak, I was like, I had never heard of this program before, and I was like, why aren't we talking about this team? Obviously, they're playing shittier opponents, and they need to start playing better opponents. Like I remember back in like the NCAA football games when they were out.
Oh,
Um,
missed those.
um, NCAA 14, greatest football game of all time in my opinion. But one of the things I love to do with that is taking just some unknown team and then building it over the course of a couple of years, and then slowly starting to get into that top 25, and then moving into, and then you would get to choose your schedule at the beginning of the year. Obviously for the first season I was having like a D ranked schedule, just seeing what I could do. Then it was a C, then it was a B, then it was an A, and then finally getting into the A plus. and moving conferences if I needed to. Obviously, that's a video game and that's a lot easier to do, but yeah, it's one thing that I do
Yeah,
like.
there's a lot of logistics to some of these teams moving conferences for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. But the top 8 teams right now for what the college playoffs would have if it was an 8 or 6 is we have number 1 Alabama, number 2 ranked Michigan, 3 Georgia, 4 Cincinnati, number 5 Notre Dame, number 6 Ohio State, 7 Baylor, and number 8 Ole Miss. Now, if you were to say we have an 8-team playoffs, I look at all 8 of those teams and I'm like, they all deserve to be there.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Notre Dame and Ohio State, of course, those 2 teams are always in the conversation to be in the 4 ranked playoffs. Like it feels like those teams are either in there or one of them is out. You don't really see it too many times where they're not both, or at least one's in there.
Here's the only thing I'll say about 8 teams this year is you look at those other 4, and Cincinnati, Notre Dame, that would be a toss-up. That would be an excellent game. It's which one's going on. Beyond that, though, Alabama, Georgia, and Michigan all run over those other 3 teams, which at that point just becomes, it makes those 3 lower teams look bad and the players on them look bad. And it's almost a waste of the physical hits that those guys on the top 3 teams are going to be absorbing in that game. They're putting themselves in more danger of an injury, whether it be minor or major, for essentially nothing. Because they're like, yeah, we know we're better than you. We knew coming in we're better than you, and we just showed it by beating you 45-10.
Exactly. No, I do.
So that's the tough thing about going right to 8 right away.
No, yeah, no, it's hard to kind of disagree with you on that aspect because again, I look at you have number 1 ranked Alabama versus 8 Mississippi, and I'm like, oh, yeah, Mississippi's gonna get, they're gonna get beat. Like,
yep.
I don't think that's gonna be a close, necessarily a close matchup right there. And again, you look at number 2, Michigan going up against Baylor. Obviously, I'm a Baylor Bears fan, but
yeah,
the Bears aren't winning that game.
No, that defense has been dominant this year. They're going to tear them up.
Yeah, and Baylor, their quarterback situation. It's this guy's playing now. This guy's playing. It's kind of one of those situations. But at the same point, yeah, it is one of those things where. But at the same point, you could see one of those teams be like, you know what, everyone is going to count us out. We are going to give the maximum amount of effort that we possibly can to prove to everyone that we deserve to be here. And I think that's the beauty of kind of the playoffs is because you could have that last seed team make a miracle run. Like look at the NHL playoffs last year when the Montreal Canadiens in any normal year they wouldn't have made the playoffs and they went all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah, and I mean, some years I definitely think that is something that would happen. We'd see those 7 or 8 seeds upsetting those top ranked teams. This year particularly, I don't think there's going to be any chance of it. That's where I think jumping to an 8 it's just too soon.
I agree.
That's why I think 6 is the better way to go to start out, because then Michigan and Alabama are sitting, and then you've got Georgia going up against Ohio State.
Yeah.
And then you've got your Notre Dame and Cincinnati game going.
Yeah.
So those are a little more competitive, I find, and then they would go on to play the 1 and 2.
Like the more and more we have talked about like the starting with the 6 and then eventually moving over to the 8, the more and more that I like the idea, just because again, this is not one of necessarily the best years to use that example for 7 and 8, just because of how dominant 1 and 2 are. But yeah, no, I do like where you're coming from in that aspect.
Yeah, and it just so happens that it's hit or miss year to year. Some years that 7 and 8 team are phenomenal teams. Yep. Other years, like this year, they're not. They're still a great team. Don't get me wrong, excellent football team, but not on the caliber of an Alabama or a Michigan.
Yeah, or
and that's why I think they need to work that slow burn growth in their playoffs if they really want to expand it.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and it is it is one of those things that I can agree with. But sticking with the college, football talk theme here, I do kind of want to move over to some of the Heisman Trophy finalists. And
Definitely.
we've got four. Obviously, this is a very big topic for college football because this is the best college football in the league. So
Not just college football, but for the upcoming NFL draft.
yep.
All four of these guys, that if they all declare, will be potentially top picks. I don't
Only
believe
two of
Bryce
them.
Young will
Only
because
two of them
he's freshman
can
still,
declare.
right?
Yeah, only two of them can declare.
Yeah, and that's Kenny Pickett and Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah, so number one rated from what a lot of people are saying right now is Bryce Young, quarterback, Alabama. Then we have
Yep.
number two, C.J. Stroud, quarterback, Ohio State. Then we have number three, Kenny Pickett, quarterback, Pittsburgh. And then Aiden Hutchinson, edge rusher, Michigan. So obviously Pickett and Hutchinson, those two guys are eligible. And I believe I don't think they've both declared, but at this point it's pretty much a conclusion that they're going to move to the next level. It would be surprising if they both stayed. I think Hutchinson has to move on because this was his last year of eligibility.
Yeah, he is a senior, I do believe.
Yeah. But I'm not entirely sure about Pickett. Actually, I think this is I think he's actually a 4-year starter, so I think he does have to move on.
And I mean, for myself, I'm excited for Kenny Pickett. He played for Pitt, and I'm hoping he falls in the draft, and the Pittsburgh Steelers could scoop him up because he would be a nice new franchise quarterback for those Pittsburgh Steelers.
And he's a homegrown talent right there in Pittsburgh.
Exactly.
So
that being said,
he knows the lifestyle.
I don't think he would be the guy to be winning the Heisman.
No.
Beyond that, I would also say that Bryce Young, he's very young still. I'd like to see more from him before giving him that Heisman trophy.
Yeah.
I don't think he's in an excellent system. Alabama is always great. It's easy to get a lot of pass yards when you're an Alabama quarterback. And so I don't know if he's quite there yet. And you know me, I am a lover of defense.
Yep.
I love me some great defensive games. Everybody hated that Super Bowl a few years back that finished, what was it, 10-3?
10-3, yeah, New England and Rams.
That was a beautiful football game for me. And I hate the Patriots and Bill Belichick, but that was a fun football game to watch because
you and I are both defensive guys. We both love watching defense, and it's
And for that reason, I really believe that Aiden Hutchinson should be the Heisman Trophy winner this year. I know defensive players very rarely get it, but he has been lights out. He has been dominant rushing that edge, and I think he's going to be one of the top picks this year. He really needs to be higher than number 4 ranked.
I agree with you. I think there's only really two guys that we should be in conversation about with this ranking. Is obviously Bryce Young. He threw for 4,300 yards, 43 passing touchdowns with just 4 interceptions. So, but again, those numbers you need to kind of look at and go, how much was that? All the amazing players around him at Alabama, because he's going to have 2 wide receivers likely go in the first round. If it's not this year, it's next year.
That's why I'd like to wait for this year on Bryce Young. Let's see what he does next year. If he does the same thing next year with new guys around him catching the ball, 100% give that kid a Heisman Trophy.
For sure.
And I mean, we haven't mentioned C.J. Stroud yet. And for me personally, that's because I find Ohio State quarterbacks to be a little bit overrated when it comes to college ball. They're playing this option offense, and it does not translate to the NFL game.
Well, one of the big things that you mentioned with Ohio State quarterbacks is one of the big issues with Justin Fields a lot of people had last year is they're like, well, he doesn't know how to read a defense. It's like, well, he does know how to read a defense, but you need to remember that the offense that he is playing in at Ohio State, it's not we are going to let our quarterback shine with the ability of reading a defense like Peyton Manning. What we're going to do is we are going to say, listen, here is option 1, here's option 2, and you have the option to either run the ball yourself or hand it off to the running back. It is quick throws and quick decisions. Now you see Justin Fields in the NFL, he's taking that adjustment period, but he can still do it. And again, looking at CJ Stroud, I do think it's a little bit premature to have him in the Heisman conversation talks. Did he look phenomenal this year? Yes. Do I think the hype is around him necessarily the same level as Young or Hutchinson? I think it's really only between Hutchinson and Young. Because again,
Yeah, I
Hutchinson
agree.
was so utterly dominant. Like at the beginning of the year, I would have said Thibodeau, easy number one overall pick. I still think he is going to be the number one pick because
Yeah, I think so.
he is just an utter monster. But the fact is that Hutchinson has now made that decision a lot harder for the Lions because it's like we know you're going to take an edge rusher. We know you're going to do that. And with Pitlick being my number one rated quarterback after last week, I'm just watching a little bit more, and it's like, you know what, this guy is probably the best out of this, again, unknown draft class. It is one of those things where, for the Lions, for instance, to take Pitlick at one, I'd be shocked. You're passing up on a guy like Hutchinson's or Thibodeau. That'd be silly in my case, but yeah, I do.
Yeah, that would be crazy. Even with how Pickett played last week, if any of these quarterbacks go in the top 10, that team's going to regret it. With all the defensive talent that's available in this draft, those top 10 picks should just be defensive players, maybe a couple of O-linemen.
Yep.
No, you go beyond that, and you're definitely reaching in this draft.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I do look at with Bryce Young in terms of being able to win the Heisman, just look at Georgia's defense the entire year. They were just suffocating. They were the number one ranked defense, I'm pretty sure, and they were just unbeatable. And Bryce Young just casually walked out there, threw for 421 yards, had a bunch of just amazing plays. He just didn't look like it phased him. It didn't look like it. He looked like he wasn't playing the number one defense. He looked like he was playing some no-name team.
Yeah, calm, cool, and collected. Definitely
Yep.
for such a young quarterback, that is very impressive. When the year comes around that he does declare for the draft, that we might be looking at a number one overall quarterback. In Bryce Young.
I think next year when Bryce Young is eligible to be drafted, it's one of those things where it's like, man, like I think there's going to be some teams maybe at the lower end who don't really have a quarterback being like, we're bad. We're really bad this year. The unfortunate thing.
Yeah, but luckily for him, he'll have the option of watching those games and go, huh, do I really want to go and play for the New York Jets and be the next in a long line of Mark Sanchez and Sam Darno's?
Yep.
Or do I want to wait another year? Because
Exactly.
even Thibodeau and Hutchinson, looking at the Detroit Lions getting set to draft one of them, maybe they're probably going, "Oh man, I guess I shouldn't have played this good this year because I really don't want to play in Detroit."
Well, and Detroit is just one of those franchises that just seems to waste talent. Obviously, you had Matthew Stafford for years, and Matthew Stafford. Obviously, me being a Bears fan, I hate Stafford. I hate watching him, but I respect him because he's a phenomenal quarterback. He's easily one of the most underrated quarterbacks of his generation. Because of look at the team that he played on. They wasted Megatron. You have a guy that was so dominant, and he's just like, you know what, I'm done. Like, I'm not gonna play for this shit organization. You know, it's gonna be interesting to see. But then again, we look at the Browns. Obviously, I know you're a Steelers fan, and Baker Mayfield before they ruined his confidence this year, and Myles Garrett. They looked like they genuinely turned that city around.
Yep.
And the Browns were always the laughing stock of the NFL for years because it seemed like they were always in conversation for the first overall pick and this, that, and the other thing. It's, oh, who are they going to screw up this year? And same thing with
for
Cincinnati.
a while. And exactly, that's what I was just going to say. And then after they got Mayfield and Garrett and they started building a bit of a core, everybody was like, oh, never mind, it's not Cleveland anymore, it's Cincinnati. And then they went out and got Joe Burrow, who is absolutely lights out.
Yep. Yeah. I still really wish the Bears would have just traded everyone and been like, you know what, Cincinnati, you're going to have Khalil Mack. I don't care. Send everyone over to get, Joe Burrow. I was that much of a fan of his.
Yeah, think that would have been a mistake. There is no one player that you should sell your entire future for when it comes to the NFL. It is a team game, not a solo game.
It is a team
Yeah.
game.
And like, so nobody, I don't think, should ever be traded in that way. You know, even Tom Brady in his prime, because you never know. A different setting, a different coach, a different scheme could result in a totally different career for a player. You know, Tom Brady playing for the New York Jets instead of Bill Belichick and the Patriots. Is he still the GOAT? I mean, speculation. It's hard to say. Maybe, maybe not. You know, I don't think Rex Ryan would have developed a player like Tom Brady in the same way that Bill Belichick was.
I agree. So, I look at Tom Brady and go, he was obviously he had the talent, but you know he needed that guy to, you know, bring him the key and unlock it, and that was Bill Belichick. And
to focus him for sure.
Exactly, and then obviously the speculation of when he moved over to the Tampa Bay, it was like, well, is he actually gonna be able to, you know, move on and be successful? And then we realized, okay, you know, Tom Brady really didn't need Belichick. He needed him at the beginning, for sure.
Exactly. Not anymore. And that was just it. Everybody who was talking about, oh, will Brady still be good? It's like, man, the dude learned from Bill Belichick for the last 15 years. Yeah. Like, they're obviously very good friends at this point, you know, even though they're no longer playing. Of course he's going to be dominant still. You don't just forget everything you've learned throughout your life when you switch to a different team.
Exactly.
And so I knew going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially with Bruce Arians as their head coach, and then the fact that they were actively talking to Brady and going, hey, yeah, we're going to bring in whoever you want.
Yeah,
I knew he was still going to be dominant.
Yeah, and, you know, Tampa Bay going into last year beforehand, like, you were looking at that team going, like, this team, even before Brady got there, really all they were missing was a quarterback. And they went
and a slightly better defense.
Yeah, and boom.
And if you solve that solution with the quarterback by being able to score 30 to 40 points a game, you don't necessarily have to fill those holes on defense.
No, I agree. Your defense looks a hell of a lot better when, you know, for instance, you're putting up 30 and the opposing team's putting up 21. You're like, yeah, sure, we gave up 3 touchdowns, but the other defense gave up a lot more, so clearly we must not be that bad.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, but kind of going back to that last little point, I do think it is really between Young and Hutchinson. If Hutchinson wins it, I think obviously that'd be a great send-off for him moving into the NFL. Yep. But it is so difficult for defensive players to win. Obviously, there's only been one in history to ever win it from the defensive side, and that was Charles Woodson. Also, funny enough, from Michigan. So who knows? Yep. We might see we might see the second Michigan Wolverine player get a, you know, Heisman Trophy. But I think if either one of those two guys gets it, I'm not going to be upset. You know, last year, obviously, Devontae Smith, you know, when he won it, it was like, yeah, no, he was a dominant wide receiver. Was he the best player in college football last year? Probably not, but like, yeah.
I still feel like last year needs to have that asterisk by it. You know, it was first year of the pandemic. There was a lot of strange things going on in team sports, especially. Yep. And I mean, if I'm not wrong, a lot of teams still didn't even participate in last year.
Yeah.
You know, not all the teams were able to fully participate, and so I feel like it needs an asterisk by the Heisman winner, the national championship, everything last season.
I think the national championship less so, but like the Heisman Trophy, yeah, for sure. But yeah, like obviously Devontae Smith wins that last year. He had a phenomenal year. He was dominant in every aspect of the game, but he also had Mac Jones throwing him the ball. He was playing for Alabama, where he had weapon here, and, you know, the year before, I think that was the easiest year ever to decide who the Heisman Trophy winner was. You know, Mr. Joe Burrow throwing for 10 billion yards and, you know, another million touchdowns with minimal interceptions. Obviously, he broke records and stuff like that, but it feels like years prior to even that, when you saw Kyler Murray win it, Baker Mayfield win it, like, you were looking at those guys going, like, that was the right choice.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, and I mean, speaking on Mac Jones, what were his stats last year?
He was around 4,500 yards, something around that area, and around 45 touchdowns. So not terribly
So
different from Bryce Young.
exactly, and he really wasn't even in the discussion for Heisman, and look how far he fell in the draft as well. And so
Yeah,
that's my argument to, is Bryce Young really that phenomenal of a quarterback, or is he just in an amazing system?
yeah. I think with
And that's why I think we need to see that defensive player get his props.
oh, for sure, and I think Hutchinson, if he gets it, he 100% deserved it. Like there's no ifs,
Yeah.
ands, or buts about that. He deserves
No,
to
and I
be the
think
Heisman.
if he gets the Heisman, he also goes number one.
I would
I
think
think
so
that
as well. Obviously, Detroit being in Michigan, they get to basically see him in the backyard. It's like, yep, we're just gonna take him. Do I think that's necessarily the smart play over Thibodeau? Not necessarily, because I do think he's a better edge rusher. But again, it's like you're looking at 1A, 1B, going like, oh, I'm taking 1B as opposed to 1A. Oh no, I have a perennial pass rusher for the next 10 years that is phenomenal, as opposed to
yeah,
the other guy who gets maybe
ultimately I
one more
guess
sack.
it's probably going to come down to more when they have the meetings with these guys, which one of them wants to be there more is what
Exactly.
it'll come down to really. It's like who wants to play in Detroit more, or who hates it here less.
When you get to Detroit, who can stomach the absolute vileness of this city less? Yeah, you know.
Detroit's going to cancel us.
I'm a Red Wings fan, so I feel like I can start talking about my Red Wings. They'll slowly be back on our side. Like, okay, we are Detroit fans, but Detroit is a hockey city. It is not a football town.
True.
Yeah, so I feel like I can bring the love for Detroit back with my love of the Red Wings and just mentioning Stevie Y's name. Fucking all Red Wings fans start creaming their pants when they hear that.
Yep.
Excuse me while I clean up my own mess there.
Right. Well, nowadays it's Tampa Bay fans that are loving Stevie Y. He's been building them franchise after franchise lately.
Well, Eisman has been with the Red Wings for the last 3 years.
Oh, did he move up? Good,
Yep.
good.
Well, pretty much what happened is that the Red Wings were going to move away from Ken Holland, and Steve Eisman was still the general manager with the Lightning at that point, and they said, "Hey, Steve, do you want to come back?" And he's like, "Yes, I do."
Yes, I do. Yeah, that's not surprising.
Literally, the
Um,
first meeting, the first press conference that he had, he stands there, he goes, "Listen, this is going to take a minute. Like, this is not going to be quick. It is going to be painful, but when it starts to go, it's gonna go." And we're seeing that with the Red Wings. Obviously, though, pretty much the years that he was there, his first draft pick, Moritz Seider, um, he is a defenseman out of Germany. He was ranked to go by most experts to be in the late, the middle of the first round to the late of the first round. And for Eisenman to take him at number 6, people are like, "Okay, Steve, what are you doing?" Like,
oh, we know exactly what he was doing.
oh yeah, and you just saw the smile on his face when he was walking up to the podium, and you can just be like, no one's gonna expect this, and everyone's gonna think I'm crazy, but just wait. And now the kid is second in Calder voting for right now, and then obviously
Yep.
the year after they have what can only be described as historically one of the worst seasons in NHL history, and they end up losing the draft lottery, which is a system I hate. I hate the draft lottery, and they end up going from the first pick to the fourth pick, and they get Lucas Raymond as a consolation prize, who is number one in Calder voting right now because he's playing that well. But yeah, like he's slowly just built the Red Wings back to being a, they're not going to make the playoffs this year, but next year I could very much see them entering the playoffs and making a lot of teams nervous. But yeah, getting back to the football talk, I want to talk about the Thursday night game with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Minnesota Vikings. I remember we were talking that day, and we were both looking at it going like, well, this should be a game Pittsburgh can win because it is against, prime time Kirk Cousins, and we all know how good Kirk Cousins is on primetime and how good he is in pressure games, which this, for the Vikings, is getting to that pressure point. And we're
Oh
about,
yeah.
like, this should be a game the Steelers should pretty easily be able to win.
Yeah, unfortunately, they left the defense at home.
Yep.
Didn't bring them with them to Minnesota, so that doesn't help.
No.
You know, you let a team put 23 points up on you without scoring anything in the first half. Not looking good.
No. Yeah, Dalvin Cook, obviously this being his first game back, I don't think anyone thought Dalvin Cook in his first game back after a pretty decent injury was going to light up for what was the total before the first half was over? 160 yards or something like that before
Yeah,
halftime.
and the final at the end of the game was like 205 yards.
Yeah, and you're just looking
And
at
let's
that
be real, I
saying,
don't think anybody thought anybody was going to put up that many rushing yards against a Pittsburgh Steelers defense, which traditionally is very strong against the run.
Exactly. And yeah, like I would have expected Dalvin Cook to, if he was gonna have a good game, maybe get like 100 rushing yards, but just kind of having himself a good return game. But I don't think
Yeah,
anyone expected him to go Derrick Henry on him.
no. Well, and let's be real, he didn't go Derrick Henry. He was untouched most of the time he was running. You know, he was running free so much because that Pittsburgh defense, once TJ Watt went down and then Alex Highsmith right behind him, all of a sudden it seemed like everybody in that secondary took it upon themselves to blitz the quarterback.
Yeah,
And as a result, it was wide open on the sidelines for him every time. And it was painful to watch.
yeah. It was a tough game.
No.
Obviously, the Steelers had a miraculous comeback in the fourth quarter, getting, what was it, like 28 points.
Yep. 28 points in the final, what was it, 18 minutes?
Yeah,
But I mean, that is where I come to the defense of Mike Tomlin. You know,
oh yeah,
after that game, there were so many people saying, "Oh, Mike Tomlin needs to be fired. He's done. He's done. He's done." And it's like, you know what? That first half was horrible. He went into that locker room, and I'm sure he sat Keith Butler down and said, "Look, you got to stop them from scoring, or we've got some serious issues we're going to have to discuss." And then he sat Matt Canada down and said, "What is happening? You scored nothing in this first half." I think he gave Matt Canada the third quarter and said, if you can't put up any points, we're going to the 2-minute offense, and Ben Roethlisberger is taking control of this game. And what happened? The defense only gave up 2 field goals throughout that third quarter. They regressed a bit in the fourth quarter, letting Kirk Cousins throw that touchdown, and ultimately that was the dagger that ended it. However, Matt Canada did not adjust at all.
no,
You know, Keith Butler adjusted that defense, and they started playing much better. They started getting pressure on Kirk Cousins, making him throw those wonky passes we're used to seeing from him in prime time. But I don't know what is up with Matt Canada. He just stuck with the same shit, and it stunk.
yep,
There was nothing. And then as soon as they went to that 2-minute offense and they let Ben start deciding what he was running for the plays, the offensive line just settled down, and they moved the ball,
yep.
and they scored and scored and scored, and they just kept going.
Yeah,
You know, so I
very
don't know
agreed to
what is
that.
going on in Pittsburgh and why they're still trusting in Matt Canada at this point. I think at the start of the season, everybody was like, oh, we got to be simple with this offensive line because they're young and we don't want to confuse them. And everybody was worried that Ben was going to be the person to be confusing them. And I think that was wrong. I think Matt Canada, with all these wide receiver screens and running back screens and short little slant plays, he's confusing the offensive line because he's wanting guys pulling left, pulling right on this play, that play, and it's too much. Whereas Ben starts calling the plays and he flat out says, you guys aren't pulling anywhere. You are a wall in front of me. That's all you need to be while these guys run their routes and I hit them. And every single time it was working. And so I don't know why they keep letting Matt Canada call these plays that just, it's not working.
Yeah,
I don't understand.
yeah. You and I are in pretty firm agreements that I don't think either of us looks at Matt Canada and goes, "This guy knows what he is doing," because clearly it isn't working. I know
with this team.
yeah.
You know, I don't want to throw the guy completely under the bus. Like he's obviously worked his way up through. He is intelligent. He's knowledgeable. This is the wrong team for this offense that he's trying to run.
Yeah.
You need veteran linemen that are used to a lot of option off. And you know, maybe he'd be great with the Bears. You know, with Justin Fields being able to have all these pulling linemen left and right and rolling out the quarterback here and there, throwing little slants, whatever it may be. But it's not working with this young offensive line. It's too much for them. And everybody was like, oh, you know, running a hurry up offense, they're not going to be able to remember all these plays and all these sets that they have to be in. But they're not struggling at all when Ben Roethlisberger is running a hurry up offense. He's calling that play. They're getting set. They're communicating with each other excellently on the line. I see them doing it just from watching on TV, and it's working. And so I think going forward, it's a long road to the playoffs. I don't think Pittsburgh's going to make it at this point, but I wouldn't give Matt Canada more than the first quarter anymore. If he can't score at least 3 points in the first quarter, then you move to that hurry up offense in the second quarter. Let Ben at least get some points on the board before halftime. So maybe we're only playing 21-10 we're down instead of 21-0. Because there have been way too many games we go into halftime and we're down by 3 or 4 possessions. And you're not going to win a championship that way. You're not even going to make the playoffs that way.
No, I completely agree with you on that one. But and going back to what you're saying about the young offensive linemen and the teams wanting to not get them confused. I've never liked that strategy. You are paying these guys to be professional. Yeah, they're young, but at the same time you have a Hall of Fame quarterback. Yes, is he aged? He is aged, but you know what? He still has the knowledge that he's accumulated over all of these years, and you go, you know what? Like, for the first couple of weeks, maybe we try to baby the offensive line just a little bit, but then you're not doing that for an entire season. You're doing that for week 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, but then after that point, you're taking the big boy pants and putting them on. You're going, all right, you should know this. You've had now at
Yeah.
least minimum 2 months, obviously with training camp, preseason, and now the first 4 weeks. At this point, if we both walked into our job after the first 2 months and didn't really know what we were doing, we'd get fired. They would
Oh,
be,
exactly.
yeah. And so it's one of those things. You're just like, okay, we get it. The NFL is the best league in the entire world, and you have monsters like Aaron Donald coming at you. But at the same point, not every team has an Aaron Donald. They don't have a monster, but you need to allow these guys to play and not baby them. And I've never liked
And
that strategy.
even if they do have a monster like Aaron Donald, you're still paid to stop him.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
If
I
you
don't
are
care if
a
you're a
first,
first year
second,
player or a 10th year player, you're paid to stop them. That's what you're there for.
mm-hmm.
You know, and so at the very latest, once you hit that trade deadline, you need to be going foot on the gas. You know, you go hard from then on, and I don't know why they're still babying these guys with Matt Canada. They've got to make some changes, and
Yeah.
I don't think that Mike Tomlin is the change.
No,
Everybody
no.
called him for his head. Dude has never had a losing season. He's allowed one losing season.
Yep. Even
You
Bill
know,
Belichick
because
has
I
had
don't put
losing
this on him.
seasons. Yeah.
You know, that being said, I think he needs to start being a bit more of an asshole. I think he's being a friend to these young players too much, and he needs to be their coach.
Yeah.
You know, I think he needs to start laying into some of these young guys, especially Chase Claypool. That TikTok attitude he's starting to get, it's got to go.
I
You know, like everybody's starting to compare him to Juju Smith-Schuster, but the difference is Juju put up the numbers and the knowledge on the field.
yeah.
You know, he would not cost us time on the clock when we're trying to make a drive to win a game.
Yeah.
And Chase Claypool was doing some dumb things on Thursday.
And then some
He
of the
needs to
comments he made
smarten up.
afterwards, after the game, you're just
Oh.
like, what are you doing, man? Like,
Well, and even comments he made a couple weeks ago with, oh, you know, maybe if we had some music in practice, it would be more fun. Seeing what you did on Thursday, you don't need fun, you need discipline.
exactly. And
You know what? You start behaving like a man and stop behaving like a high school football player, and then we'll give you your music.
exactly. And I've never once thought Tomlin was the issue with Pittsburgh, mainly because, again, he's never had a losing season. He is one of the best coaches in the league, and I think what you're seeing is similar to what is happening with Sean Payton. He has an aged quarterback, and he has a couple of situations that he needs to figure out. And for right now, if he gets himself a new young quarterback, we can start to judge him on that aspect, how he develops this young guy and how he can, progress this team. But for right now, I think you look at it and go, with the issues, Matt Canada, obviously he's not really calling great offense. And this is someone who watches a team play every single weekend, and a guy calling an offense who doesn't know how to call an offense with the Bears and Matt Nagy. So I can see when an offense isn't being called right, because unfortunately I get to watch it every week. but yeah, and I do think Tomlin needs to be a little bit more hard on some of his players, because again, that Chase Claypool situation where he is taunting the other team. It's like, man, you are down right now. You are losing.
Right. And then on that final drive too, like he celebrating a first down when there's 38 seconds left.
Yep.
When if you had just tossed that ball to the referee instead, when he was standing there waiting for it, instead of making him run over to you to collect it from you, he could have set that, and we could have spiked that ball and probably had 31 seconds on the clock instead of 24.
Yeah.
And that 7 seconds is 2 extra plays when we're down on inside the 20.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been one pass to Freiermuth. It would have been, okay, that didn't work. We've got 2 more chances at this touchdown now. And because of Chase Claypool, we didn't have those opportunities.
Yeah, no,
I put that 100% on his shoulders.
Yeah, and it was a really, really stupid move by Claypool to do that. And
it was selfish.
It was selfish. It was selfish. But one thing I think we are going to do is we are going to head into a short break. This is something that we are going to try to do at the top of every single hour, just to allow us to either go get some water, do what we got to do, and just for you guys to relax a little bit. But we will be back here in a couple of minutes. Alrighty. We are back from our short little break here. And yeah, so we ended off kind of talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers and kind of the catastrophe that they had this week. Because I don't think you would be upset if by saying that was a catastrophe.
Oh, it was 100%,
Yeah.
and it was such a roller coaster week for a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. We had two big games, both decided on by a matter of inches.
Yeah.
We barely beat the Ravens. With that last ditch effort they made to get a 2-point conversion when really they should have kicked a field goal and sent it to overtime. Followed up by just barely missing that pass to Freiermuth, which, granted, we still would have had to get a 2-point conversion in order to tie it, but we've been pretty good at that so far this year. And I think if Ben Roethlisberger had thrown that ball a foot and a half more to his left, more under the K of that Vikings instead of the I, that would have allowed Freiermuth to more lean into it, grab it, and land on his back to cushion that ball.
Yeah.
Whereas where he threw it, it was kind of underneath him, and he was landing on his stomach anyway. I think even if he had secured that ball, the refs probably would have called it incomplete because he wouldn't have had control and it would have touched the ground.
Yeah, it was going to look like a bit of a weird pass or a weird catch situation that unfortunately in the NFL is always just such a clusterfuck of a situation to try to break down because you'll look at a catch and be like, oh, that's easily a catch, and then of course it gets turned over for whatever reason. But yeah, I'm going to jump into kind of the Bears situation here a little bit. And so honestly, Sunday's game against the Arizona Cardinals, I don't think anyone went into that game going, yeah, the Bears have a hope in hell of winning. Yeah, like I think everyone looked at that and been like, okay, Justin Fields isn't playing, Matt Nagy's still the head coach of the team, and we don't know if he's calling plays or if he isn't calling plays. He insists he isn't, but at the same point, when you're looking at it, it very much still looks like he is calling the plays because he has a walkie-talkie. He's talking, and you see, our quarterbacks looking over at the sideline, going, okay, and then, yeah. So it's weird to know, but yeah, honestly, I wasn't even surprised with how that game went. I stopped watching after halftime or even before halftime. I honestly didn't watch the first quarter, watched the second quarter, and I was like, yep, I'm happy to move on from this game this week. I've got more stuff, better stuff I got to do anyways. So
Right.
Yeah, it's just one of those things you're just kind of looking at, like, it is just so unfortunate to watch in that, just watch this team play. It is rough, man. But yeah, their offense somehow managed to get 22 points, which honestly was surprising to say the least, because they don't typically really do a whole lot on offense. But yeah, I know you wanted to talk about the AFC playoff race right now, and that's something that you were kind of looking at. So because
Well,
obviously
yeah,
there's not a whole lot to talk about with the Bears other than them just being shit.
fair enough. Yeah, it's a struggle of a year for those Bears right now. But I mean, as far as I know, they're not completely out of it in the NFC, are they? Oh
Uh,
yeah, I mean,
yeah. Well,
it's
they're
pretty
not
tough.
they're
They're
not
gonna have to win
technically
out.
yeah, they're not technically mathematically eliminated at this point. The only team mathematically eliminated, funny enough, is the Texans with a 2-10 record. The Lions still technically can make the playoffs.
Yep.
Which, let's be honest here, if they somehow make the playoff, if the Lions make the playoffs, I don't know what I'll do, but it's gonna be something stupid and embarrassing. I'll say that right now.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the NFC is a little bit more defined for most of the divisions as to who's winning out and who's making the playoffs. The AFC though, just amazing to me that we're past the halfway point right now, and 13 out of the 16 teams are all within 3 games of a playoff spot.
Yeah.
Like you've got your best team in the Patriots at 9-4, and all the other teams are sitting at 8, 7, and 6 wins, aside from the three horrible teams, which is the Texans, the Jags, and the Jets.
Yeah, yeah. Which is insane to think about that, Team 13 being Miami right now. If they win,
right?
one more game and let's say Buffalo loses this week,
Yep.
they instantly move up to the seventh seed and Buffalo
And I
moves
mean,
right down.
Miami's been on a roll. They started 1-7. They've won 5 straight,
Yeah,
and
and Tua
I
is
know a
looking
lot
a
of
lot
people
better.
are hating on them because they're playing shitty teams and anybody can beat these teams, but
A win
they've
is a
looked
win.
good while doing it.
Yep.
They look like they're finally playing the type of football they want to. It's not like they were winning these games by a hair, by a fluke bounce or anything like that. They were winning these games in dominant fashion.
Exactly.
Now, I would like to see them playing more playoff ready teams and see how they do there. And we're gonna get to see that in the last 5-6 weeks of the season here. They're gonna have to play some stronger opponents,
Hmm.
and they kind of control their own fate at this point in that aspect.
They do, yeah. Well, I look at, for instance, like, the Dolphins. Tua is playing a lot better. I know Tua gets a lot of hate, but I think obviously him coming into the NFL, he had such a weird, like last year. I think everyone can say that was a weird year last year.
Yes.
It's kind of one of those ones where you do kind of have to put an asterisk on it, like what we were saying with the Heisman Trophy earlier. But it was one of those weird years where I don't think normally you can really look at it and be like, this was kind of a fair comparison to put it at. I always say with rookie quarterbacks, their rookie year, that's a throwaway year. If they were phenomenal, throw it away. If they were bad, throw it away. It doesn't really matter because they don't know the game yet. And that is the big thing right there, is that they need to learn the game and then we see what they're really made of.
Well, and it's not just them, but the defenses facing them.
Mm-hmm.
Because we saw that with guys like Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Their first years when they were active and playing, they just tore up these opposing defenses because they're so unique in the way they play the game. But as time has gone on, these defensive coordinators and the players that play against them regularly start to recognize tendencies still, and they start to key in on that. And that's when you really see your top caliber players separated from the middle tier and the you're just average Joes. It's the guys who can adjust. The
Mm-hmm.
guys who are like, okay, this worked for me for 3 years, great,
It's
but
not going to work for me
now
anymore.
it doesn't work ever. I need to do something different. And the guy who can go in there and find that different thing and make it work and succeed, those are the Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks and players.
Yep, I agree. But yeah, looking at this AFC playoff picture, we have the Patriots at 1, Titans 2, Ravens 3, Chiefs 4, Chargers 5, Bengals 6, and Bills 7. And kind of on the bubble right now are the Colts, Raiders, Steelers, Browns, Broncos, and Dolphins. So again, it is really, really wide open as opposed
Yeah,
to the NFC.
like I said, it's everybody except for those bottom 3 teams.
Yep.
And even those top 4, none of them are guaranteed to win their divisions.
Nope.
Like the Ravens, they've got the Browns this week. The Browns could win that game, and that's
Jump
going to
up to 3.
shift a bit of the dynamic in
Yep.
that division, especially since the Ravens have already lost to the Steelers.
Yep.
And then you look at the AFC West, and you got Chiefs and Raiders this weekend. If the Raiders somehow beat the Chiefs, which I don't think is outside the realm of possibility, uh, we're looking at a dead heat in that division. So either one of them could take it. And so none of these teams are going in going, okay, well, we for sure got our division locked up, so we're
Yep.
getting a playoff spot. All these teams are playing for both division and potentially a wild card because none of them know for sure if they're going to be able to take their division.
Yeah.
Even the Colts are coming up on the Titans real quick. The Titans have not been the same team without Derrick Henry.
No,
And
they have
until they
not.
get him back, they won't be the same team. So at this point they're just trying to hang on to their hopes and dreams, and luckily for them, they've got Pittsburgh next week. Who are they playing this week?
The Colts
The
or
Titans.
the Titans, they are playing the Jaguars. So, you know,
Oh, so easy win for them this week.
it should be.
In
It should be
theory,
an easy one.
it should be. Um, and then they've got the Steelers next week, which, as we've seen, like you can be any quarterback in the league and have a chance to be putting up great numbers against that Pittsburgh Steelers defense.
Yep.
And so the Titans, that division's going to be real interesting. I think whichever one of those two teams wins that division, especially with the Titans supposed to be getting Derrick Henry back in time for the playoffs, that team is going to make their way all the way to the AFC Championship, whether it be the Titans or the Colts.
Yeah, I think the only team that I can really look at right now in the AFC and go, this is a team that I feel like I can confidently say is going to win their division is the Patriots, because they've beaten the Bills. They are currently the leader in that division by 2 games, or 8, 9, yeah, 2 games. So they have a bye week this week, and it does look like the Bills are going up against the Buccaneers. I think the Buccaneers are going to beat them. I don't think the Bills are as good as marketed. Yes, and that's going to be wide open. Right now the Bengals are 1 game away from being number 1 in their division, which is huge. The Chargers and Chiefs are 1 game away. This is just so completely wide open. I think the teams that we are seeing in the playoff picture right now are realistically gonna be the teams that ultimately make the playoffs. I struggle to see the Patriots not making it. The Titans should be getting Derrick Henry back for that playoff push, and I still think they're good enough to continue to play well, or well enough to beat some of these teams. Like, they should be able to beat the Jaguars. If they don't beat the Jags, that is, it's panic time for Tennessee. It's like, okay, well, we need Henry back. We need Henry.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you. The Patriots really are the only team that I think are guaranteed to win their division at this point. But watching all those other AFC teams, none of them have been able to string together dominant performances. Yeah. And so at any point, we could see any of these teams, from the Chiefs to the Steelers, go on a 3-game win streak or a 3-game losing streak. And any of these teams do that, that's going to be the difference maker. And so that's why I think at this point, you can't predict anything beyond the Patriots being in the AFC playoffs.
Yeah.
I think those other 12 teams, any of them could potentially make it.
Well, yeah, just like looking at the matchups for all of the AFC teams this week, obviously the Patriots at number 1, they have a bye week, so they can just sit pretty for the rest of the week. The Titans, they have the Jags, so it's one of those things where you're looking at them going like, okay, well, they should be able to beat them. The Ravens and Browns are up against each other. That should be a decent game.
I'm actually kind of surprised that game didn't get flexed into the Sunday night slot.
Yeah, as opposed to the Packers and Bears, where it's just going to be, Aaron Rodgers saying, I own you again. No.
Right, and then the announcers talking about how Matt Nagy might get fired.
Yeah.
I feel like that's all it was. That game's just there as a platform for them to talk about Aaron Rodgers and the Bears organization woes.
Yeah, which it's going to fill an entire broadcast. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Then, we have the Chiefs versus the Raiders. I don't think that game is going to be as close as some people say. I think the Chiefs have found their groove at this point, and the Raiders, I think the Raiders are going to keep it closer than what some people think, but I think the Chiefs will kind of take it to them.
And I agree that the Chiefs' offense has been starting to click a little bit more, but I think that game's going to be a shootout. That's good. Whichever quarterback has the ball last, that's the team that wins in that game. We're going to see an explosive offensive game because that Chiefs defense still isn't doing very much. And the Raiders offense has looked really well also. They've been getting their running game going, and Derek Carr is looking real comfortable in the pocket. So I think that is a key game for that division, much like the Ravens-Browns game is. And then you got a couple of other teams that have theoretically easy wins. You got the Chargers playing the Giants.
Yeah,
they should be able to just walk all over the Giants and win that one. And same with the Broncos playing the Lions. They should be able to win that. Though the Lions are coming off of that first win of the season. They're feeling pretty high. And as we discussed last week when they were still winless, they are the best winless team at that point that we had ever seen. And now they've got their first win. who knows? Maybe this is a start of a run for them where they win out the rest of their games this season.
I
We
do
don't
think
know.
it's I don't necessarily think I would say they're going to win out, but I think this is one of those things where if we see the Lions win maybe two or three more games, I wouldn't be shocked by that in the slightest bit. Like, I could 100% see the Lions feeling really good about themselves going up against the Broncos and just taking it to them. Because, again, the
Yeah,
Broncos, at some points this season, they have looked good and they have looked horrendous. And
this is true.
at this point, like the Lions, it seems like every single game that they play this year, it is close, it is hard fought, and it's really, do the Broncos want to win this game more? I think
Well,
that's what we're looking at here.
and I do, because I'm pretty sure that the game is in Denver. I think, yeah, it is in
Yeah,
Denver. And see, anytime a team's going into Mile High Stadium, I feel like when it's a close game like that, that gives the Denver Broncos the edge because these players are always training at that high altitude. They're
yep,
more used to the wear and tear on the body that higher altitude has. And those Detroit players, come the fourth quarter,
they're
they're
gonna
going
be
to be winded.
gassed. Yep.
They're going to be slow, and that's when the Denver Broncos will take advantage, I think.
And obviously, Denver being a colder city, Goff does not play well in cold environments.
True, but I mean, the rest of the Detroit Lions players, I mean, it's Detroit.
It
It's
is
cold as
Detroit,
balls
yeah.
in Detroit. So at this point they should know what cold weather games are like. Even though they play in a dome, like you still got to travel outside to get to that dome.
Oh,
So
for
you know
sure,
how
for
cold it
sure.
is.
Yeah. But there is a difference between playing cold and going from a warm bus or a warm car
Yes.
into a stadium.
Oh yeah, yeah. Trying to catch one of those footballs when it's, minus 10, minus 15 out, it's like trying to catch a brick.
Yeah, it is.
It's
It
not fun.
hurts. It
Yep.
hurts.
Yep.
But yeah,
Though
like,
maybe not with Teddy Bridgewater throwing it. He doesn't throw it that
no, no.
hard.
Neither does Jared Goff, though, either.
No, exactly. Exactly.
And we have just lost all of our Detroit fans again.
That's okay.
Yeah,
The three of them will come back at some point.
exactly. But
Yeah.
yeah, we see the Colts this week. They have a bye week, so they can't really advance themselves. The
No, but that
Steelers.
being said, that is an interesting point because next week, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves a bit. The Patriots and the Colts are both on a bye this week, and they play each other on Saturday next week, and that is going to be a key game. If the
Yep.
Colts can win that, that will be a statement game for them to show that they are here and they are making a push for that Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be a defining game for Mac Jones as well because that's going to be really, I feel, the first team outside of that Bills game that's really targeting the Patriots and really keying in on how to beat them. And they've got 2 weeks to prepare.
They do.
Like if you can't beat Bill Belichick with 2 weeks of preparation, you're not going to beat Bill Belichick.
No, and that's just the thing is that just because the real big issue with the Colts right now is they have 2 weeks to prepare for Bill Belichick, but Bill Belichick also has 2 weeks to prepare for them.
This is true.
So, and
And that dude is scary.
I don't want to give Bill Belichick 3 days to prepare for my team, let alone 14, if not
Right?
more.
Oh, I feel that.
Yeah, it is a terrifying thought. But yeah, the Dolphins also have a bye this week, so they aren't able to advance themselves. And then that's pretty much where it lies. Like the games that I'm going to be focusing on for the AFC this week is I want to see the Chiefs Raiders. I want to see the
Yep.
Ravens Browns. And then I'm also going to be watching the Bengals versus the 49ers because the Bengals, they are not in win now mode, or they're not in they must win to keep their playoff hopes alive. But I really do feel like for the Bengals to make the playoffs at this point, I feel like they do need to win out just because of how tight it is. And
It is. Yeah, that division is so tight.
yeah,
Like that, it's separated by 2 games. And the Bengals, that they were in my power 3 last week, and they looked absolutely flat last Sunday.
yeah, yeah.
And so they're another one of these teams in the AFC that they go a week and they look dominant. They put up loads of points against the Steelers. They looked like they were firing on all cylinders. And then the very next week, they looked like they forgot how to play the game altogether.
Yeah, and
And
they're going up against
that is the case with so many of these teams in the AFC this year. And that's why I feel like it's so wide open.
Yeah.
And as you know, I will be watching that game as well. You know, the Bengals,
cheering
I
for the
want them to lose
49ers.
to the Niners.
Yep.
You know, at this point, with how my Steelers are playing, I want all the AFC North teams to lose as much as possible.
You're willing that the Ravens and Brown games ends up in a tie.
That would be nice. Tie or a Browns win with like just this long list of injuries to key players on both teams. You know, because that's about the only way I think the Steelers are making it with the Swiss cheese defense that we're playing this season.
Yeah. But I am going to watch that Cincinnati Bengals 49ers game just because the 49ers are a lot better of a team than what their record shows right now. And
Yep.
I think this is going to be a really, really good test for Cincinnati. If they can go out there and win against a pretty decent 49ers, not a great, but a pretty decent 49ers team, I think, that gives them a big amount of confidence. But yeah, going back to what you're saying is that they're just so flip-flop with what they're doing. It's, it's one week they are unstoppable, and then the next week, it looks like they forget how to play the game.
Well, exactly. And there's a couple of those cross-conference games this week that are key on both sides of the ball, and that is the Tampa Bay Buffalo game and the San Francisco Cincinnati game. And because the NFC has got some great races for those playoff spots as well. You got the Cowboys and Washington playing this week, and Washington, much like the Dolphins, have gone on a 5-game winning streak. They're looking like the team they wanted to be at the start of the year. Ron Rivera is coaching lights out. And if they can beat the Cowboys this week, they still play the Cowboys once more this season. They play the Giants twice and the Eagles. It's all that division. That is all that Washington has left. And so they 100% control it right now. If they can win against the Cowboys this week, they're going to have easy wins against the Giants in theory, and they're going to take that, which opens up the door for the 49ers. And that's why I think this is going to be a real tough game for Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
They're going up against the Niners team that are sitting 6-6. They know they're not winning the division because Arizona is just dominating that. But they're looking up at the Rams at 8-4, and they're looking at what's happening in the NFC North, the NFC East, and the NFC South. Like the division leader for all those divisions is set. I don't think any of us are going to argue that the Buccaneers will not win that the South. The Packers are going to win the North. The Cards have the West locked down. That East is still wide open though.
Yep.
And I think because of what Washington has there, we're going to see a lot of middling teams at the end. So San Francisco still has a really good outside shot of making one of those wild card spots, and they're going to play for their lives this weekend.
I agree with you. I do think the Cowboys do look like they are the favorites here at 8-4, and obviously Washington is coming after them with a 6-6 record, but they've been hot lately. They've been hot, and the Cowboys have kind of been up and down. I know there's been some COVID issues with the team, which is unfortunate, but yeah.
A lot of teams have dealt with that this year.
Yep.
Like we knew that coming in that it was going to be an issue. Even my Steelers have had guys out on key weeks and key games that resulted in losses for us.
Yep.
But I mean, that's the risk you take if you want to go ahead and run your league during a pandemic.
Which I think, they have done honestly a really good job of thus far. There's only been a couple of instances I've seen throughout the league where I'm like, ugh. Obviously the Aaron Rodgers situation, which...
And again, that's why I think that game's not getting flexed out of Sunday Night Football. Aaron Rodgers, let's talk about the current bad boy of the NFL.
Yep. No,
even though that game is going to be kind of a snooze, I think.
Yeah, I think the only way this game gets interesting is if Justin Fields looks at the Packers and says, I don't care what is happening, I'm winning this game and there's nothing stopping you. And the only way that game's going to end up being a win for the Bears is if it turns out to a shootout and Justin Fields just plays lights out. But again...
Well, Justin Fields is going to play lights out. He is an excellent young quarterback. It's that Bears defense that's the question. Like Aaron Rodgers extends plays, and the Bears get penalties on those extended plays. There's going to be some defensive pass interference plays. And, they're going to get a little antsy wanting to get to him, and I think we're going to see a few more of those Bears offsides.
Yep.
So that's going to be what hurts the Bears' chances to win this week, and it'll be the defense. Because Justin Fields, I think he is your quarterback of the future, and he's just looked better every week. And he's had a few weeks off now, resting due to that injury. So it might be a slow start for him, but he'll adjust at halftime, and he will make a game of it.
I'm sure he will, but again, I would prefer this game to be like an 11 o'clock matchup as opposed to like Sunday Night Football, because it is one of those things where, there are better games out there that could be flexed into the. For instance, like the Chiefs and Raiders, that would be a phenomenal game to have in that. For that
exactly, there's 3 big divisional games that should be flexed into that over Packers Bears, because that division is not up for grabs right now. So why are you putting that there? Whereas you got Cowboys and Washington, that one could be played. Raiders and Chiefs, as you mentioned, and Ravens and Browns.
Yep.
All 3 of those are tight divisions that are played for. All of them should be flexed into that Sunday Night Football spot.
Yeah,
any one of them. Just flip a coin at this point.
Yeah, like
but get the Packers and Bears out of there.
The way that I'm looking at this game, it's like looking at like the Panthers and Falcons. They're playing each other this week. If that was a Sunday night game, I'd be like, flex that out. Like,
right?
It has no importance to the playoff picture. And this is one of those situations where, again, it could be one of 2 ways. Either it's going to be a really decent game where it's a shootout, or it's going to be a blowout by the Packers.
Right.
And honestly, I think a lot more people are leaning towards it's going to be a blowout for the Packers as opposed to being a shootout. I would say it's probably like an 80% chance of a Packers blowout to a 20% chance of it being a shootout game. But,
I mean, I think it depends on the weather as well. I haven't looked at the weather forecast for Green Bay, but I mean, if it's a snowy, cold day, maybe even Aaron Rodgers can't get his feet under him, and maybe it won't be a shootout in that case. But that will be a weather deciding factor for sure.
For sure.
If it's a nice day, then Aaron Rodgers will light it up as Aaron Rodgers does.
Yep. The man just seems to find a whole new gear when he plays the Bears, and I just really hope he leaves next year so I don't have to see him anymore. I've had to deal with fucking Brett Favre, and then I'm like, all right, he's gone. Boom, we don't have to worry about him. And then Aaron Rodgers opens the door and says, "Hi, do you want to continue to lose for the next 15 years?" It's like, son of a bitch. Again?
Man, if Jordan Love somehow pans out, you're going to be so mad.
Speechless on that one. Please, God, knock on wood.
Right?
Yeah. Pray to whoever is going to listen to me, God, no. Let the Packers have 20 years of just quarterback failure after failure. When you have 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks back to back, like, it's hard to have a Hall of Fame quarterback to begin with.
Just one, exactly. How many teams have had even one? Mm-hmm. Not many.
No. And, you look at like the Bears, they're the only NFL franchise in the history to never have a quarterback throw for over 4,000 yards in a season. They are the oldest team in the NFL, but have never had a quarterback throw for over 4,000. And the Packers somehow get 2 fucking franchise Hall of Fame quarterbacks back to back.
Yep. Those damn cheeseheads.
Need to wear the cheese graters this week.
Yep.
So, kind of moving on from football talk, because we've talked a lot about football today. We did touch a little bit on hockey. But yeah, kind of moving over to a sport that I particularly love to watch. I know you don't really watch it a whole lot, and that is Formula 1.
I've tried, but honestly, so many of the races are at like 6 a.m. and like my local time, 6 a.m. And if I'm up at 6 a.m., it's because I haven't gone to bed yet.
Exactly.
The odds of me waking up in time to watch like that are slim to none, and none is beating the shit out of slim.
Yeah, like I hear you. Like this year has been the first year where I've gotten up for every single race because years past, this is my third ever year watching Formula One, and the years past I would always, if it was a later race, I would watch it live, but I would typically wake up and then I would watch the replay of it. But like this is the first year where I'm actually watching it live, and I've done some of those 6 a.m. Watchings, and it's like you're just sitting in your chair like, okay, hopefully this goes by fast so I can get back to bed. You know,
Have a quick nap before getting up to watch football.
exactly, having a quick power nap. You know, but yeah, this year has been one of the most exciting years in a long time for the sport because you have two absolute juggernauts going at each other in Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. Lewis Hamilton is a guy who drives for Mercedes. He is a 7-time world champion going for his 8th this year. If he gets his 8th, he now holds the record for the most world championships ever won by one individual driver, surpassing Michael Schumacher. And Max Verstappen driving the Red Bull car, he is going for his first ever world title. He's a young 23-year-old, I'm pretty sure, and Lewis Hamilton is, I want to say, 34, 35. So he's getting up there in the age department. But it has just been an absolute war zone between these guys. At the beginning of the year, it seemed like Lewis was kind of off to a really hot start, kind of taking it a little bit to him. And then,
Which everybody expected to,
yep.
everybody expected him to come in and be his usual dominant self.
Mm-hmm. And then, Max Verstappen at some point, he went 5 races in a row winning. And he looked like he was going to win 6 in a row. But then Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen crashed. And it
Yep.
was, again, for me personally, I'm cheering for Max Verstappen in this category because I think he deserves it. I think he's working his ass off, and he doesn't have the best car in the grid. He doesn't. Mercedes definitely has the best car. And, I think Lewis Hamilton, got a little, cheeky and hit him. And obviously, Max Verstappen flew into a wall, registering like 50 G's when he hit the wall for a crash. And then the kind of turns, it kind of switched up a little bit. Lewis started to pull back, and then Max started to come back, and then Lewis, then Max, then Lewis. And now, right now, going into the final race, both of these drivers are sitting at 369.5 points. So,
Well, and after that first crash too, when Lewis Hamilton put Verstappen into the wall, that was when the rivalry really started to pick up. Because there were a couple other races throughout the year after that one where they were bumping and rubbing and taking each other out of the races. Like I remember
it happened in Italy as well.
Yeah, I remember there was some talk about possibly even handing out some suspensions to one or both of these guys just to get them to calm down because it was getting dangerous to the point where F1 was starting to worry that, oh my God, we might see one of these guys die on the track, and we cannot have that. We've got an excellent older guy who has really been carrying our brand for the last couple of years, and his successor essentially, Max Verstappen, coming up, and we like the rivalry, but we don't want you guys putting each other into the walls.
Exactly.
We want clean racing.
Yeah, and the last race there was a lot of controversy because in the race there was a situation where Lewis Hamilton was overtaking Verstappen, and Verstappen, he got the place back. And what had happened is that Red Bull was told by the stewards, is what they're called, to give the place back. So they told Max Verstappen, he started to slow up, and apparently Mercedes hadn't gotten the message that Red Bull was giving the place back to them, and Lewis Hamilton crashed right into the back of his car. They both finished the race.
Mm-hmm.
And
there was speculation that it was like a brake check essentially. It was brake checking him to get him off his tail, and it's like, man, that's a dangerous game if that's what you're playing.
And when you're driving at 200 miles an hour, a brake check is never a good thing when you're driving a street car or, a millions of dollars sports racing car that, does casually 200 miles per hour like it's nothing, and you're running into the back of someone else. Now, I do think Max was really trying to give the place back. I do. Um, he was kind of in the middle of the track when he was doing it, so it was kind of a little bit of a dirty move. But at the same point, I think it was more of a racing incident than anything of just like, well, Max, he was told, give the place back. He saw an
Yeah.
opportunity where there was a straight where he could give the place back, and could he have moved over left or right more? Yeah, for sure. But he didn't. And Lewis crashed right into him, and obviously he didn't
Mhm.
get the message that Max was trying to let him take the place back. And that is
Yeah.
just
And if it was that message given, then understandable. Max Verstappen was probably like, okay, I'm going to give him the place back, but I'm keeping my driving line. He can go around me.
yeah.
I'm not giving up my driving line as well as my position. This is the lane that I want, and so he can go around, take his spot back, and then I will pass.
Yeah, which I know a lot of people are like, that is a dirty, dirty tactic. But at the same point, you know what? This year has just been nothing but dirty tactics. And
And it's a tight race.
yep,
Like every race has been tight, and the race for the championship is tight as well. So like I don't blame him. He's trying to get into Lewis Hamilton's head a little bit
mm-hmm.
at that point.
And
And I don't blame him.
yeah, and this is one of those things for like, if people, you're not a big fan of Formula One, but you love, or you've never really watched the sport, for instance, but you love exciting sports. I say, if you don't want to watch it at 6 a.m. tomorrow, I get that. I would say definitely watch the replay of it, because it is going to be one of those things where it is just going to be insane. Max Verstappen today in qualifying ended up getting pole, which means he starts first, and Lewis Hamilton is starting second. It doesn't, like, both of these guys, neither of these guys need to win. Just one needs to finish ahead. Max Verstappen finished ninth, and Lewis Hamilton can finish 10th, and Max Verstappen wins the championship, and vice versa. But this is going to be one of those ones where I feel like every other driver on the grid should just kind of, take 5 seconds after these guys go and just let these guys go, because at this point it doesn't matter for anyone else. It's just these two. If I'm being honest, it should really just be a race of just these two on the track and just going like, it's just you two, no one else. Figure it out.
It should be, but if I'm not mistaken, the the manufacturer championship is still up for grabs as well, is it not? I believe Ferrari are in front right now.
No, Mercedes
No?
is up by
Mercedes?
28 points on Red Bull. So technically, it is possible for Red Bull to take the Constructors' Championship. But
Yeah.
even Christian Horner, the Red Bull's team director, he has said there's going to have to be some godly, otherworldly thing for us to win the Constructors. Because both of those
Right.
cars are going to have to not finish or not get any points. And for instance, let's say Max Verstappen does get the win and he gets the fastest lap, he's going to get 26 points. And then Sergio Perez, his teammate, is also going to have to get a buttload of points and hope that Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas don't get any points. And that is just not in the realm of possibility right now. And so I think
Fair.
Red Bull is looking at more of this, like going, you know what? We are going to try and get our drivers in the best situation that we can to go after the Constructors' Championship, but it's all Max. It's all about Max right now. If we have to tell Sergio Perez to, accidentally bump into, Valtteri Bottas' tire to, crash him out of the race and, compromise his own race, they've said that both teams have said they're not going to, go into dirty tactics, but,
What you say and what you do are two different things.
yeah, technically speaking, if both Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen crash out, Max Verstappen wins the championship because he has more wins throughout the season.
Oh, okay.
So, a lot of people have speculated that Max is literally just going to run his car into Lewis and they're both out, and it's like, hey, I'm world champion. which
Yeah, but nobody will respect him for that.
no.
He will get zero respect, and come next racing season, you're going to have a target on you from a
Oh,
lot of guys.
without a doubt. And
Yeah.
I
Not to mention the fines and sanctions that F1 would throw down on you if they
yeah.
thought for a second that you intentionally caused a massive crash out like that on their final race of the season.
Yeah.
You better believe F1 is going to be taking a lot of money from Verstappen and probably suspending him for several races to start next
Oh,
year if that was the
without
case.
a doubt. Like they
Yeah,
fined him $50,000 for touching Lewis Hamilton's car. Just
yeah,
by touching it, he got fined $50,000.
yeah. They're not messing around with that kind of stuff. So
Mm-mm.
I'm hoping to see a clean race.
Yeah, for me, again, I'm gonna be up 6 a.m. Coffee in hand, Red Bull in the other, watching this race and just hoping that I get to see a exciting, clean race. Because at the end of the day, that's what I want to see is a really good, hard fought race, and I don't want to see any of these guys bumping into each other and stuff like that. I do hope Max Verstappen wins because I do think he deserves it, and he has just been killing it this year. But if Lewis Hamilton wins, you're looking the way that I've heard someone compare Lewis Hamilton to other sports for people who don't necessarily know about Formula One as well is think of Wayne Gretzky, what he was for hockey. That is what Lewis Hamilton is for Formula One. He is just one of the most dominant guys to ever do it. Has he thrown in some dirty tactics to win along the way? Yeah. Has he had the best car under him for the last 10 years? Yeah. But at the same point, if you throw, for instance, yourself or myself into that car, we're coming 20th if we don't crash and
Well,
die.
that's just it. Like he's got the best car under him for a reason. He was a known and proven quality driver, intelligent young man when he got in that position, which was a very similar position to what Max Verstappen is in right now with
Yep.
Red Bull. The question will be, does he stick with Red Bull or does he move to a more prominent team at that point? Because I know Red Bull. Uh, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that.
Well, the thing is, there have been rumors that once Lewis Hamilton does retire, that Mercedes is going to potentially look at trying to get Max Verstappen to come over to the team. But I think Mercedes right now, they're two drivers that they have next year because they are changing it. Lewis Hamilton obviously is returning, but they're bringing in George Russell, who is my personal favorite driver out of the grid, and I think he's going to be kind of this next superstar level driver. He has just proven time and time again that he's really good in what is the worst car on the grid. And his time is due, but I think you bring in a guy like George Russell and have Max Verstappen in the same car. That'll be really, really interesting to watch. But yeah, no, I'm going to be absolutely glued to my TV tomorrow to watch this race because I think it is going to be utterly, utterly phenomenal sporting. And then I get the bonus of watching a bunch of NFL football as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, it's one of those things.
Out of curiosity, are you watching that F1 race just on your own, or are you joining the crew of guys we know that are watching it via
I'm
stream?
I'm gonna be watching it on my own.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah.
I was just
Uh,
curious.
oh, for sure. Like I knew they were talking about trying to do that, but I'm like I'm gonna watch it at 6 a.m. on my own time, and then I've got shit I gotta do throughout the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is one of those things where I will be watching it on my own. But yeah,
Good. Well, I hope it's a good race for you.
I hope so too.
Keep you
And
awake. Yeah.
it's one of those things that I'll be talking about more in depth next week because obviously that'll be over, and then we'll be able to talk about it and kind of break down the season potentially a little bit more. But yeah, it is gonna be interesting to see for sure. But yeah, I don't know if you have any other talking points that you want to bring up, but yeah.
No, I think we did pretty well there. I think we should pop back to an NFL real quick. I'm going to put you to the challenge this week. I asked for your Power 3 last week, and you listed some teams, but you didn't want to actually rank them. I want you to rank them this week. Give me your 1, your 2, and your 3.
Ooh,
Who are
okay.
your best 3 teams in the NFL right now?
I think you have to look at the Cardinals as the number 1 team. With Kyler Murray being healthy and, DeAndre Hopkins also being healthy, their defense is playing lights out. Their offense is firing on all cylinders. I'm going to say right now, the Cardinals are my number 1 team. I'm going to then put my number 2 team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's really, really, really difficult to move away from a Tom Brady led team when they're playing so well, and they are playing so well right now. Yeah, and then I'll say the Patriots are my number 3 team, just because Mac Jones has been playing lights out, and they do look like they are the best team in the AFC right now. Like we said earlier, they're the only team that either of us has really said is the team we are confident in saying is going to be in the playoffs for this race. Because again, the Titans we're not sure of, the Ravens we're not sure of, and the whole list of what we were talking about earlier is just we're not sure of. But yeah, so right now I'd say Cardinals 1, Buccaneers 2, Patriots 3. I'm curious to see what
All right,
your
well,
ranking is.
honestly, we are in agreement on that for sure. Yeah, because you remember last week that was my setup was I had the Cardinals at the top, Buccaneers second, and I had the Bengals third. They have definitely fallen out of my Power 3 after
Yep.
what happened last week, and I agree with you that just for the sake of getting an AFC team into the top 3, I would say the Patriots. Uh, Mac Jones lighting it up though. He didn't really do anything last week. He barely lit a match. Bill Belichick only let him throw the ball 3 times,
Yep.
and so I would say that the Patriots are number 3 because of Bill Belichick, not
Yeah.
so much Mac Jones.
Oh, for sure.
You know
And
that was 100%
a Bill Belichick
coaching
win.
that
Yep.
won that game last week, and some nasty weather, granted. So I understand why they were running the ball a lot. I was shocked that they only threw it 3 times though. That
Yeah.
is insanity that you're able to win a game
And throw
only
it 3
throwing the
times.
ball 3
Especially
times.
in today's NFL. And that's
Right?
the big thing.
In such a pass heavy league,
Mm-hmm.
only threw the ball 3 times and you still won the game. So
Yeah.
that's a scary prospect because if their defense can get going, that essentially means they could beat anybody on any given Sunday.
I
You
think
know,
one of the games that would be really interesting to see in the Super Bowl is the Buccaneers Patriots. As much as I don't want to see the Patriots back in the Super Bowl because we had 20 years of them constantly being there, I would love to see Bill Belichick versus Tom Brady in the Super Bowl to see which one it really is.
uh, I would and I wouldn't at the same time, just because honestly, seeing that in the Super Bowl, it would almost feel like it was rigged. Unless both those teams win clean games all the way, no referee interference in any way, shape, or form, could I accept that? But if at any point the referees decide one of those games to get those 2 teams playing in the Super Bowl, I am calling a fix in by the NFL at that point.
Oh,
To
for sure, for
just
sure.
just for that to see
Yep.
Bill Belichick against Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, because frankly, I don't think either of those teams are the teams to beat in their respective conferences.
Yeah.
You
And
know, I
what are the
still
teams for
think.
you?
Hmm?
What are the teams for you in each of those conferences that are there to beat?
For me, the Super Bowl is still Arizona Cardinals from the NFC, and then the Titans if they get back Derrick Henry from the AFC. If they don't get back Derrick Henry, then I'm thinking the Indianapolis Colts from the AFC. So it'll be, but Arizona Cardinals hands down are going all the way. Because that leads me to my next question for you. I'll give you my answer first. Who do you think the MVP candidate this year? And for me, it's Kyler Murray. Even though he missed those 3 games, because he came back after those 3 games missed and didn't lose a step at all. His
Yeah.
passes are accurate. His vision of the field is immaculate. He's seeing everything, and these throws he's making, they're in the spot they need to be every single time, no matter what position he's throwing from. Like he's setting his feet and throwing, it's right on target. There were a couple times I saw him throwing the ball with both his feet off the ground, and it is still landing exactly where it needs to be. Like he's the best player in the NFL right now, Kyler Murray, and I think he is the MVP lead runner at this point.
Like while you were talking about that, I was really trying to think of someone else to do it. But the more and more I'm listening to you talk about the way Kyler Murray is playing, and from what I've seen from Kyler Murray myself, it is really, really hard to dispute what you're saying with that because he has just been so good this year. I don't think, Tom Brady is there. Yeah, I think he's up there. Aaron Rodgers is, of course, going to be up there in the voting. But yeah, when you say Kyler Murray, the guy who's really been the best player in the league, and obviously the Cardinals, they didn't play as well when he was gone. And when he came back, they instantly went back to being just this dominating force. So, I do kind of have to sit back and agree with you on that aspect right there.
Yeah, and this Monday night game will be the nail in the coffin as far as I'm concerned, because we haven't seen Kyler Murray in prime time very often yet, and so we're not sure how he's going to perform under that kind of pressure. But if he can go out against the Rams, who are the only team that could potentially catch them in their division,
Yep.
And he puts up the same kind of numbers, dominates them, and knocks them down, at that point, I don't think anybody should be able to make an argument for any other player in the league to win the MVP above Kyler Murray.
Yep.
Barring some kind of season-ending injury where obviously no longer able to play throughout the remainder,
Yep.
then obviously we would have to look elsewhere. But if he stays healthy and he leads his team, which is currently 10-2 with the best record in the NFL, he deserves it. He has earned it. He went through the growing pains that with the Arizona Cardinals. They put the tools around him that he felt he needed, and look where they are now.
Exactly, and they're a team only going to be getting better after this season as well, and which is the scary part, is because they are a team that I think is shocking a lot of people this year with how good they were. Obviously, they finished the year last year with they were either 7-9 or they were 8-8. I believe they were 7-9, and it was kind of a disappointing year because a lot of people felt they should do better. But yeah, no, I think they have completely shocked the NFL this year. But I do hear what you're saying with the Rams being like the only team that could take them away from their division. I will say this time and time again. I will never count out a Tom Brady led team.
No, definitely. I'm not counting him out. I just don't think he's not playing MVP
Oh, for
football.
sure. No,
He's
not
playing
MVP.
game management. He's playing Bill Belichick football, really. He's managing the games. Yeah, he's still putting up a lot of points. He's got a lot of explosive weapons around him, though.
Yes, he does.
Much like Kyler Murray does. But that's what it is. He's managing the games properly on offense. He's chewing up that clock, and he is ensuring the wins come that way.
Yeah,
and so that's why I don't think it's quite MVP of the season. Come playoff time, if he takes those Bucks all the way to the Super Bowl and wins again, then yes, give him that Super Bowl MVP. But I don't think he should be in the talks this year. Like Kyler Murray's up here, and all the others, Tom Brady, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, they're a tier below. He is on his own on that top pedestal right now, in my eyes.
Yeah, Kyler Murray has just been playing phenomenal football right now, and it is one of those things where I don't disagree with you there.
No.
But yes, so on that note, we'd like to thank you all for stopping by this week. I'm Brendan. This is Sterling. We will see you again next Saturday, same bat time, same bat channel. Have a good one.
Have an excellent week. Enjoy football tomorrow, everybody.